Dearest new neighbor at 657 Boulevard, allow me to welcome you to the neighborhood. 657 Boulevard has been the subject of my family for decades now, and as it approaches its 110th birthday, I have been put in charge of watching and waiting for its second coming. My grandfather watched the house in the 1920s and my father watched in the 1960s. It is now my time. Do you know the history of the house? Do you know what lies within the walls of 657 Boulevard? Why are you here? I will find out. Read that again, slowly. Not a scene from a horror novel. Not a line of dialogue written by some Hollywood screenwriter sitting in a comfortable Los Angeles office. Those words were typed on real paper, sealed in a real envelope, and placed inside the mailbox of a real family's new home on a warm June evening in 2014. Now imagine this. You have just spent every last dollar of your life savings, $1.3 million, on what you believed was the most beautiful house you had ever seen. 6 bedrooms, grand colonial architecture, a wraparound porch that catches the afternoon light like something out of a dream. You are standing in your brand new driveway. The air smells like freshly cut grass, and for one breathtaking moment, you feel it. The overwhelming, almost unbearable feeling that you have finally arrived. Then you open your mailbox. The envelope is white and thick. Heavy stock paper, the kind reserved for wedding invitations or legal notices. Your name is not on it. Instead, in cold, blocky letters, it reads simply, "The new owner." You tear it open, expecting a welcome note from a neighbor, maybe a coupon for a local pizza place. What unfolds in your hands instead is something that will haunt the next 5 years of your life, destroy your finances, fracture your marriage, and force you to ask a question you never thought you'd ask about your own home. Who is watching us from inside these walls? This is not fiction. This is the true, documented, and still unsolved nightmare of Derek and Maria Broaddus. This is the case of the watcher of 657 Boulevard, one of the most psychologically disturbing true crime stories to ever unfold in suburban America. Tonight, we are going all the way in. No shortcuts, no surface-level summaries. We are pulling back every layer of this story. The letters, the investigation, the suspects, the conspiracy theories, the financial devastation, and the deeply unsettling question that investigators never managed to answer. So turn off the overhead lights, get comfortable. And if you happen to glance at your own window right now and notice you can't quite see who, or what, might be standing on the other side of the glass, well, that's probably nothing. Probably. Before we go any further, if this is your first time here at Midnight Whispers, welcome to the circle. Every single week, we go deep into the real psychological horror stories that the mainstream news cycle covers for 48 hours and then forgets. The cold cases that were never closed. The mysteries that were never explained. The doors that were never fully opened. If that sounds like your kind of dark, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on all notifications. Now let's go back to Westfield, New Jersey, and let's start at the very beginning. To understand exactly why this story is as terrifying as it is, you first have to understand the setting. Because the setting is almost as disturbing as the letters themselves. Westfield, New Jersey. Population, approximately 30,000. Located 24 miles southwest of Manhattan. Tree-lined streets. Immaculate Victorian and colonial revival homes. A thriving downtown strip with boutique coffee shops, family-owned restaurants, and a historic train station that dates back to the 1800s. The public schools are consistently ranked among the best in the entire state of New Jersey. The crime rate in Westfield is so low it borders on statistical impossibility. People leave their front doors unlocked. Kids ride bikes in the street until the streetlights come on. Neighbors bring each other casseroles when someone gets sick. It is, by every measurable standard, the most picture-perfect version of the American dream that money can actually buy. This is important, because when something goes wrong in a place like Westfield, I mean really, fundamentally wrong, it doesn't just feel like a crime. It feels like a violation of something sacred. It feels like finding a corpse in the church. Derek and Maria Broaddus were not naive people. Derek was sharp, calculated, and driven. He'd grown up in a working-class household, watched his parents struggle with money, and decided early on that he was going to build a different kind of life for his own children. He climbed his way through the corporate world and landed a high-level executive position at a major Manhattan insurance firm. The kind of career that requires early mornings, late nights, and an absolute refusal to accept failure. Maria was the emotional anchor. A Westfield native, she had grown up in this very town, walked these very streets, and understood its rhythms and its people in a way that an outsider simply couldn't. She was warm, well-connected, deeply trusted by the community. When she told Derek that 657 Boulevard was the one, he believed her without hesitation. 657 Boulevard was built in 1905. Over 100 years old, it stood as one of the most architecturally stunning homes in Westfield. A sprawling, 6-bedroom colonial revival mansion that oozed old-money elegance from every detail. The wraparound porch, the original hardwood floors, the grand staircase, the crown molding that craftsmen simply don't bother with anymore. The house wasn't just a piece of real estate. It was a statement. They closed on it for $1.3 million in the spring of 2014. They were so excited, so certain of the future that awaited them inside those walls, that they immediately began planning extensive renovations before their family officially moved in. They hired a full crew of contractors to repaint, restore old fixtures, update the kitchen, and generally transform the century-old mansion into a home worthy of the life they had worked so hard to build. For those first few days, everything felt electric. Contractor trucks filled the driveway every morning. Paint swatches covered the walls. Maria sketched room layouts at the kitchen table while Derek walked the property with the crew, pointing at what needed to be done, planning, dreaming, building. They had no idea. It was a warm Tuesday evening in late June when Derek stayed behind after the contractors left. He was doing some light painting in one of the back rooms, just him and the house, the old walls absorbing the sound of his footsteps. As the sun dipped below the tree line and the neighborhood settled into that blue-gray stillness of early evening, he walked down the long driveway to check the mail before heading home for the night. The mailbox was at the end of the drive, partially shaded by the overhanging branches of an old oak tree. Derek pulled open the small metal door and reached inside. One envelope. White. Heavy. Thick. No return address. Addressed in shaky block print to the new owner. Derek tore the envelope open at the end of the driveway, right there in the fading light, half expecting a welcome flyer from a local realtor. What he pulled out instead was a single sheet of paper, folded in thirds, typed in a cold, deliberate font that felt, even visually, deeply wrong. He read the first line, and the warm summer air went ice cold around him. The letter opened with a performance of warmth, a welcome to the neighborhood, a brief note about the house's history, before pivoting, smoothly and immediately, into something that made Derek's stomach drop. The writer identified themselves as the keeper of 657 Boulevard. They claimed their family had been watching the house for generations. Their grandfather had watched it in the 1920s, their father in the 1960s. And now, it was their turn. The house was approaching its 110th birthday, they wrote, and they had been put in charge of waiting for its second coming. Already, this tells us something profound about the psychology of whoever typed these words. This wasn't impulsive. This was ritual. This was the language of obsession passed down like an inheritance. But then the letter turned. I see already that you have flooded 657 Boulevard with contractors so that you can destroy what should be. Bad move. You don't want to make 657 Boulevard unhappy. The house, an entity, a deity, something to be appeased, something capable of being unhappy. And then, the line that made Derek's hands start to shake. You have children. I have seen them. So far, I think there are 3 that I have counted. Do you need to fill the house with the young blood I requested? Better for me. Was your old house too small for the growing family? Or was it greed to bring me your children? Once I know their names, I will call to them and draw them to me. Sit with that for a moment. Young blood. Not kids. Not children. Young blood. The deliberate, ritualistic, almost sacrificial framing of 3 real children who had done nothing in their small, innocent lives except exist. Derek ran. Back into the house, slamming and locking every window, every door. He moved through the dark rooms with his flashlight cutting through shadows, his heart going absolutely haywire in his chest. Every corner felt occupied. Every dark window felt like a face pressed against the glass. He called the Westfield Police Department immediately. 2 veteran officers responded, arrived at the house, read the letter, and, by their own admission, had never seen anything like it in their entire careers in this quiet, safe community. Their immediate advice: remove the children's names from every public record you can access. Do not tell the neighbors. Do not post on social media. Do not acknowledge the letter publicly. Let us investigate quietly. Derek and Maria agreed. They kept the secret. For exactly as long as the secret could be kept. Because 3 weeks later, a second letter arrived. And the second letter made everything worse. This time, the watcher proved that the first letter had not been a fluke, not a random act of intimidation from someone operating blindly. The second letter contained information that could only have come from someone who had been physically present at the property, standing close enough to watch, close enough to hear. The watcher listed the Broaddus children by their full names, in order of birth, with the specific nicknames Derek and Maria used when calling to them from the porch. Then this: will the young blood play in the basement? Or are they too afraid to go down there alone? I would be very afraid if I were them. It is far away from the rest of the house. If you were upstairs, you would never hear them scream. That last sentence deserves to be read twice. You would never hear them scream. This was not the rambling of someone disturbed. This was the deliberate, calculated work of someone who understood exactly what they were doing. Someone who wanted Derek and Maria to lie awake at night, running those words through their heads on a loop. The letter also described, in accurate detail, the specific make and color of Derek's car, the exact arrival time of the contractors each morning, a particular art easel that Maria had positioned in front of one of the ground floor windows. That last detail is what made the Westfield Police Department's blood run cold. To see that easel, positioned where it was, visible only from a particular angle, you would have had to be standing inside the property line, close to the house, face near the glass. And then, buried in the final paragraph of the second letter, was a single sentence that launched a separate investigation entirely. Have they found what is inside the walls yet? In time they will. Derek and Maria immediately halted all plans to move in. They could not, would not, bring their 3 children into this. They hired private security firms within the week, then retired FBI profilers, then ex-homicide investigators who specialized in psychological profiling. They blanketed the property with a state-of-the-art surveillance camera system that covered every angle of the exterior. Derek, unable to surrender to helplessness, began spending nights alone inside the dark house, sitting in a lawn chair, a flashlight in his hand, waiting. Just waiting. The psychological toll of that kind of existence is almost impossible to overstate. Paranoia is a specific kind of poison. It doesn't hit you all at once. It accumulates. It starts as a reasonable response to a real threat. Your children have been named in a threatening letter, so of course you scan the street every time a car slows down near the house. Of course you look twice at every neighbor who waves. Of course you feel your pulse jump every time your phone buzzes with an unknown number. But over weeks, and then months, it becomes something else entirely. Every single human being in your vicinity becomes a potential monster hiding behind an ordinary face. The woman at the grocery store who makes small talk. The man who jogs past the house every morning at 7. Your own neighbors. People you've seen at community events. People who brought your family welcome gifts. Any one of them could be the person who typed those words. Any one of them could be the reason your children don't feel safe playing in their own yard. The FBI psychological profile that emerged from the investigation painted a specific portrait. The watcher was almost certainly older, likely someone in their 50s, 60s, or beyond. They were almost certainly a longtime resident of the immediate neighborhood. The language of the letters suggested a delusional, possessive attachment to the property itself. Not just an obsession with the Broaddus family, but a deeply ingrained belief that 657 Boulevard belonged to them in some fundamental, almost spiritual way. Generational watching, a sacred duty. The language wasn't the language of anger or jealousy. It was the language of someone who genuinely believed they were right. All eyes turned to the family directly next door, the Langfords. An older matriarch, Peggy, lived in the house with several of her adult children. The house had a near-perfect sightline into the Broaddus property. The side yard, the windows, even the front driveway. Among the adult children living there was a man named Michael Langford, described by several neighbors as quiet, introverted, and somewhat out of step with the social rhythms of the neighborhood. He kept unusual hours. He didn't socialize much. He watched. He matched the profile. Westfield police brought Michael Langford in for questioning. The interview was extensive. And then it hit a wall. No physical evidence. None. No fingerprints on the letters. No traceable DNA on the envelopes. No witnesses who had seen anyone near the mailbox on the days the letters arrived. The investigation had no foundation to stand on. And then the DNA results came back. The partial DNA recovered from the envelope seal, from whoever had licked it shut, belonged to a woman. Michael Langford was immediately eliminated as a suspect. The investigation fractured. Suddenly, every theory the police had built collapsed under its own weight, and they were starting over in open terrain with no map. Suspects multiplied. Was it someone who had lost a bidding war on the property? A disgruntled former contractor? A real estate operator trying to tank the home's value? A former employee of the previous owners who had developed a fixation? Someone from Maria's past using the house as a psychological weapon? With every theory that couldn't be proven came a fresh wave of suspicion, and with every fresh wave of suspicion, Derek and Maria's life became a little less livable. Their marriage, once their foundation, began to crack under the weight. The financial strain alone was suffocating. They were paying a mortgage of over $7,000 a month on a house they could not set foot in without armed security. They were simultaneously paying rent on a temporary home. Their savings, already drained by the purchase, were hemorrhaging further by the day on private investigators and security technology. They had poured their entire life's financial foundation into a property that had become a prison. In desperation, they filed a lawsuit against the previous owners, the Woods family, alleging that the Woods had received one of the Watcher's letters before the sale was completed and had buried it. The Woods family denied this. The lawsuit dragged through the courts and ultimately resolved without the vindication Derek and Maria were looking for. They explored demolishing the house and building 2 smaller homes on the property to recoup some of their investment. The town of Westfield blocked the plan. They proposed converting the property into a group home, partly out of spite. The neighborhood pushed back, and the plan died. Every exit door they tried was locked. And then the story went public. When the story of the Watcher finally leaked to the press in 2015, it did not trickle out. It exploded. 657 Boulevard became international news overnight. Network television trucks parked themselves outside the property and stayed there for weeks. The family's faces were broadcast on morning shows, evening news programs, and every major online platform. True crime forums erupted with thousands of theories posted per day. Amateur sleuths drove to Westfield just to walk the perimeter of the house and photograph the windows. People camped across the street. Some people tried to break in. And then the internet turned. A vocal and surprisingly large contingent of amateur investigators concluded, with absolute conviction, that Derek and Maria Broaddus had written the letters themselves. The theory was laid out with the kind of confidence that anonymous online platforms reward regardless of evidence. The family was experiencing buyer's remorse on an overpriced home. They couldn't afford the mortgage. They wrote the letters to manufacture an escape route from a financial trap they had built around themselves. The argument was compelling to anyone who didn't look too closely. It conveniently ignored the forensic difficulty of setting up such an elaborate deception under police scrutiny. It ignored the fact that law enforcement, including experienced federal investigators, found no evidence whatsoever that the letters were self-generated. It ignored the DNA evidence that pointed to an actual third party. But the internet doesn't particularly require evidence. It requires narrative. And the narrative of a staged hoax was more entertaining to many people than the mundane truth of a family being terrorized by someone who had yet to be caught. The victim blaming didn't just sting, it compounded the trauma. People who had already had their children threatened by a real, anonymous stalker now had to endure public accusations of being frauds. They had to read comments from strangers dissecting their behavior, their finances, their marriage, and their credibility, while simultaneously trying to keep their 3 young children from finding out that any of this was happening. Westfield, the town Maria had loved her entire life, the community she had brought her family home to, became unnavigable. When you become famous for a horror story, every interaction carries the weight of it. Neighbors who meant well couldn't stop talking about it. Strangers recognized them in the grocery store. The children heard things at school. The sanctuary was gone. More than a year after the first letter arrived, when investigators had gone cold and the media coverage had begun to cycle down, the mailbox at 657 Boulevard received one final delivery from the watcher, the third letter. By this point, the surveillance cameras covered every inch of the exterior. The police had been alerted. Everyone was watching the watcher. And yet, the letter appeared, delivered without being caught, without triggering a single camera at the angle that mattered, without leaving a single trace. The third letter was the most unhinged of them all. The tone had escalated from eerie to openly unraveling. The watcher expressed fury that the house remained empty, that the young blood had never arrived. The letter accused Derek of failing 657 Boulevard. It taunted them for spending money on investigators and security. And then it said something that investigators have never fully been able to contextualize. You are despised by the house. Leave now and go to a better life. 657 Boulevard wants someone who loves it with young blood. The house speaks. The house despises. The house wants. The profile had been correct from the beginning. This was not a person motivated by a grudge, or by money, or by any rational self-interest. This was someone in the grip of a decades-old delusion. A person who genuinely, sincerely believed that they were the custodian of something ancient and sacred, that their family had been charged across generations with a divine purpose, and that the Broaddus family was an intruder in a story that had been running long before they arrived. That is, in many ways, the most disturbing possibility of all. Not malice, belief. Because malice you can reason with, negotiate with, expose, and prosecute. But a person who genuinely believes they are fulfilling a family legacy spanning 100 years? You cannot reach them with logic. You cannot make them understand that what they're doing is wrong. In their own mind, they are the protagonist of this story. And the Broaddus family are the intruders. In 2019, after 5 years of psychological warfare, financial devastation, and a media gauntlet that added humiliation to every other wound they had suffered, Derek and Maria Broaddus finally sold 657 Boulevard. They sold it for $959,000 on a house they had purchased for $1.3 million. After legal fees, after private investigator costs, after security systems, after the lawsuit, after 5 years of dual housing payments, the actual financial loss to the Broaddus family is estimated to have surpassed $600,000. They walked away. They had to. The house still stands. It has been renovated, as the Broaddus family always intended. It has been lived in. New people moved through those old rooms, slept in those grand bedrooms, stood on the porch where Derek once stood on a warm June evening with an envelope in his hand. And the case remains completely, entirely, officially unsolved. No one has ever been charged. No one has ever been named. No fingerprints were ever matched to a living person in any database. The DNA on the envelope seal, belonging to a woman, was never connected to any suspect. Michael Langford was cleared. Every other person of interest either passed a polygraph, had an alibi, or simply could not be connected to the letters through any physical evidence that would hold up in a courtroom. Somewhere out there tonight, and I want you to really sit with this thought, somewhere out there, a person is living a completely ordinary life. They might be watching television. They might be having dinner with their family. They might be lying in bed, in the dark, in the same quiet town of Westfield, New Jersey. They know exactly what they did. They know exactly why they did it. They know every sentence of every letter by heart because they chose every word. And they know they got away with it. The question inside the walls, the one the watcher teased in the second letter, the cryptic reference to something hidden within the physical structure of 657 Boulevard, was never answered either. Investigators went through the house. Nothing was found. No hidden room. No concealed relic, no body behind the plaster, which means one of two things. Either something was there and wasn't found, or it was never a physical thing at all. It was a psychological trap, a sentence designed specifically to make Derek tear the walls of his own home apart, to destroy from the inside what couldn't be destroyed from the outside. If that's the case, it worked. As you settle in for the night, wherever you are listening to this, in your bed, in your car, on a late walk through a neighborhood that probably feels a little less safe right now than it did an hour ago, I want to leave you with one final thought. Every house has a history before you arrive. The walls absorbed conversations you were never part of. They held the weight of lives you will never know. The floors remember footsteps that have long since stopped. Every house you have ever lived in existed before you and will exist after you, watched over by its own silence, holding its own unspoken version of events. For most of us, that history is unremarkable. Ordinary people, ordinary lives, ordinary passages of time through ordinary rooms. But occasionally, very occasionally, you move into a house where the history isn't finished yet, and someone reminds you. So tonight, before you drift off, look at your windows. The ones that face the street. The ones at the back of the house, the ones that let in just enough dark to remind you that outside exists. Is someone looking back? That's probably nothing. Probably. Now I want to hear from you. You've heard everything tonight. The letters, the suspects, the evidence, the theory that the Broaddus family wrote the letters themselves. Who do you believe typed those words? Michael Langford? Another neighbor hiding in perfect plain sight? A woman, as the DNA suggests, whose name has never once appeared in any public report on this case? Or do you think the most disturbing answer of all is the true one? That the watcher was simply someone who believed every word they wrote? Drop your theory in the comments right now. I read every single one. The best ones might end up on the show. Thank you for spending this dark hour with Midnight Whispers. If this episode left you looking over your shoulder, good. Share it with someone who deserves to feel the same way. Until next time, sleep well, if you can.